You are live.
We're on.
We're on. We are here. It is Friday.
Yay.
And yeah, we're just taking a moment to ground in with a little Led Zeppelin. Great song.
Yeah.
Classic. So joining me today is Dina Varellas, who is an intuitive writing coach and an author, and she's here to talk about intuition and the magic of curiosity, and we're going to explore all of that together today. But before we jump into that, some of you are joining me for the first time, and so by way of introduction, I'm Lauren Baluchian. That is how you pronounce it. And I am a mindset and confidence coach for badass women. And I don't like that badass term when you think about it as the fake badasses. I'm talking about the real ones who do their thing, follow their truth, and they're really there to make a meaningful difference in this world. And I love working with these type of women because as successful as they are, whether they're a business owner or an entrepreneur or a leader in their industry, they still have the humility and humanness to struggle with imposter syndrome, self-doubt, judgment, self-judgment, all that. And so it's my joy to get to bring this pool of women together and work through these self-sabotaging habits and these patterns and bring light to them. Because once we expose them, we realize there's brilliance and brightness sitting there. So I lead a program a couple times a year. Excuse me. It's called 7 by 7. And the next one will be in June. It does require, you to apply, but it's not exclusive in the sense that anyone is welcome, but you really got to be ready to do the work and go intensive. And so it's intimate. One of my values and why I love doing these kind of one-on-one chats with other women in their own industry, in their own space, who are also being leaders, sharing their truth, knowing that it's not an easy journey, but it's certainly fun and real, and we don't have to do it alone. And so Dina has been one of those women that's been on the journey with me. Turn this down a little bit, music. Yeah, so Dina has been a soul sister of mine through the leadership women's coaching that we both got called Through the Practice. Through our mentor, spiritual guide, whatever we want to call her, Michelle Long, but she helped coach and model for us what it means to be a awakened woman leader, leading in a new way that embraces vulnerability and authenticity, and talks about this stuff, brings light to it. So, yeah. Dina, so great to see you. Get all
just listening to you, Lauren, and watching you, I can feel like tears coming to the back of my eyes. Just being able to witness you where you are right now and think about our journey. And when we met, I think it was in 2019, beginning of 2019, when we started the program at the practice together, and we were in such different places. And to think how far we've come, and to think where we are now, and to see where you are, like living your dream and doing this coaching work, and totally how this work has transformed your personal life. And to see you behind the screen where you are right now is just really inspiring. And, as you said in your intro, like ready to put in the work, with your 7 by 7 group. And it's so true. Like we put in the work and we were together in that space. And just to see how when you feel that inspiration to put in that work and you're ready for a transformation, just to see that you're like living proof of that. So I'm really proud of you. And yeah, like I said, I feel a sense of emotion just because it's, we talk about it a lot, but like really to be here in this moment and to see where we've come and where we've shifted is pretty magical and magnificent. And like you said, I think you said brilliance and brightness, and you can really see that like in your essence. And this work is really about coming home to ourselves and uncovering that brilliance and brightness within ourselves. So I'm so happy to be here.
Well, I'm honored, Dina, because it's been a journey, and to witness one another. And that's so much I think about what happens in spaces of safe, sacred sisterhood. Because there's so few pockets in our life, right, that we can take the mask off and really feel safe to be unapologetically ourselves through the tears, through the fear.
For sure.
I remember both of us being like, we've got sore throats because we're not speaking our truth.
Yeah. Congestion.
It does. It manifests itself in our physical bodies. So Dina, you've had quite the journey though. I mean, you have also stepped in and taken that time to slow down and use your intuition as your guide. And so I would love for you to share with other listeners or women, whoever's on with us or watching this replay. And if you're watching replay, put it in the comments later. And if you have questions, I like to make these interactive. So feel free to add comments or questions throughout, and we'll address them. But, Dina, really just sharing what that's been like for you, like how you started. How did you even end up in the practice? What were you looking for from that leadership stepping in training? Because you're in corporate as well.
I was looking for that sisterhood and that connection. And also I registered or I certified as a yoga teacher in 2014, and I had been teaching for a little bit, but there was like an aspect that was missing. And that was what we learned in the practice, right? Like the practices, the weekly practices in terms of being authentic and vulnerable and sitting in a circle with women and sharing what was real and coming up for us and feeling safe to hold that space for myself and to also hold it for other women. And so it was a personal journey, but I was also very curious about how I could incorporate this in my own practice as a leader, as a teacher. And it really kind of like brought together everything I loved, like the meditation, the altar, sitting in circle, having the weekly practices, having the accountability to come back each week was huge.
That's huge.
Yeah, because that's where you see the most transformation, and you can set that container for really deep connection and intimacy because you're showing up every week, and it's like you're removing a layer each week, and then you can get more and more connected with yourself. And I think with the women in the group. So that was like one of, and I was very curious. I mean, we were talking about curiosity, but I've known Michelle for a long time. We went to grade school together. And I was just curious about the practices and what this would look like in my life. And then also how it would look should I want to then offer it to other women. And both have had a major impact on my life, personally and professionally. And, as you know, I do lead the practice, and it really, for me, has all the values of how I want to show up in this world, like living it and then providing that space, like live it to give it, and giving it to the other women in this space to show up and get comfortable with themselves, because it's not a comfortable journey.
Yeah. Right. Let's just call it what it is.
Yeah.
So how has curiosity played a role in your unraveling or deepening your journey?
I think more importantly now, it's definitely brought like a lightheartedness to my process and joy. It wasn't always that way, but being curious, for instance, kind of puts a softening around like an expectation.
Yeah.
And it invites you to explore something that you may or may not be, maybe you're a beginner at, or you know nothing about. And it invites you to explore something that you might have not discovered about yourself or another person, or in the world or the environment that we're around. And it really allows you to kind of play with this idea of chasing your curiosity to then uncover more things that might then start to connect the dots. And you might discover, oh, I want to try this, I want to try this. And then it could lead to something that you had no idea or expected would happen.
Yeah, it starts with like one curious question, right? Like it's
Yeah.
that one thing, and then you step there, and then you like peek around, you're like, oh, okay. Like I hear a lot of, I see it happen all the time where, women have dreams and visions, but the tyranny of the how am I going to make that happen, paralyzes the process.
Yeah.
But if you just start with one curious, like breadcrumb that's on your path, well, and I'd love for you to share like how that even worked so Dina, I will bring you to the end and then you can connect the dots. Like,
yeah,
it ultimately led to this path of, I guess I want to call it like meditative healing. I'm sure there's another name for it, but working with a horse that essentially became a really kind of a mentor and a very special relationship that helped you heal so much about yourself. And I've heard about this before, so I'm curious because I am first to admit I am not an animal person. Like dogs scare me even. I never grew up with pets, furry pets. I only had fish and tadpoles and
yeah.
all that stuff. So when I hear about this, what is it called? Like it's when you have animals helping with healing. Isn't there?
Well, there's equine therapy, and then there's also equus coaching that I've done. So I would say like the journey has been a combination of like equine therapy, equus coaching, and then learning how to ride a horse and care for a horse, like horsemanship.
I'm like, who knew? I remember when you were first telling me about this, I'm like, I really want to hear more and how this unfolds. You were still on the journey.
Yeah.
But to me, because it sounds so, for me, like out of my wheelhouse and uncomfort, it's like, Lauren, that's probably where you need to be. That's what I'm telling myself.
Yeah.
So share with everyone else, like what first inspired you, how this kind of got you to this place, and then ultimately where it landed.
With the book.
Well, that's kind of the ending, I guess. But like
Yeah.
even with just with the therapy, like what made you say, I think you didn't, some other intuitive person had said to you, like, I can heal you with animals through the phone. Am I making this up?
Well, really, it's so funny, Lauren, because I'm like trying to think, where do I begin, right? Because it's all about these curious steps and about even wanting to become an author. That started in like 2017. But with my journey with horses, so at the onset of COVID, my husband and I were hiking a lot. And we were hiking in the open space over here in Walnut Creek, and they were the open space is by a lot of stables. So I would see horses or people on horseback on the trail. And I got super curious about riding horses and what that would be like. And I also did an animal communicative class where I communicated with horses. So that's probably where you got that from. And so that kind of piqued my curiosity too, of like horses. And I also, I grew up with cats, love cats, but I was scared of horses. My mom even tells me, I was in Brownies and we went on an adventure where we were going to go horseback riding. And I looked at her and was like, do I have to go? Because the horses are huge. They're huge. Even now, I'm intimidated. But So that was that peak of curiosity. And I didn't have, we were in the first year of the pandemic. I had no idea of like where I'd begin, where I'd go for horseback riding lessons, when that would be okay, and when that would open up again. So it was just like this seed that was planted. And then also at the onset of the pandemic, I started leading intuitive riding classes for women. And this woman that I knew, a friend of a friend, had referred this other woman to my intuitive riding class. So she's in my intuitive riding class, and she starts, sharing her stories. And she's also a equine therapist and a horse. She offers riding lessons, and she's a horse trainer. I was like, coincidental. And so I got to know her, and through our journey together, I was leading the practice. It was the winter of 2021. And, we had talked about my curiosity around horses, and she was up in Petaluma at the time. And she's like, I would love for you to come up. And so we kind of did like a work trade where she continued on with my journey and my, through the practice that winter. And I started to go up once a week and have these lessons and these moments with her. And I had no idea what it was going to look like, but I was like, yes, this was something I was curious about last year, and let's give it a go. I had no idea what to expect. And I just dove right in, and what was going to be like 3 or 4 sessions turned into 5 months. And I went every Saturday and would spend probably a half a day at the ranch just with her, my friend Rachel. And then she has 3 horses, but the main horse that I worked with was Cody. And that really was the process of just leaning into my curiosity, leaning into my intuition and trusting it and going with it, and not even knowing what to expect or what was going to unfold.
Can you speak to a little bit of the beginners? Can you speak to a little bit of the beginner's mindset that, how it, as adults, we are so conditioned. I think we know everything now. We're finished with school, but like how that can be a very teaching, healing, eye-opening experience to be back at a beginner's starting point again.
Yeah. I definitely went in with that mindset because I was a total beginner, and it left me to be more open to whatever was going to unfold and not put any expectations on myself and any timelines on myself. I was just going to see what it was about and learn about horses, learn about that connection between horses and humans, and learning how to ride, and just being really present with the whole process. And I think with the beginner's mind, you then open yourself up to possibility of things unfolding that you wouldn't anticipate. And you allow yourself the freedom to just explore and play without this idea of, in 1 year, I'm going to be like a horse and jumper, or I'm going to do shows, or whatever it is. It was just, we were in the midst of the pandemic, and it was just this really healing journey for me of connecting with a horse and really not knowing how deep that work would go within myself. I would say halfway through, and this is kind of what I write about in my book, is like the beginner's mind I was aware of it, started to like go away. And I started to put these expectations on myself. You should do better. You should learn better. You should be learning faster. And it really opened up for me of like, oh, this pattern is still here.
Yeah.
It comes back when we try something new, and you really need to be conscious and aware that can pop up, and then find ways to then hold a gentle sense of compassion for yourself, and really try to come back into that beginner's mindset versus perfection.
What you're bringing up is making me think of how, like, anytime, how many people, have started like that exciting, like, oh, I'm going to start yoga, or I'm going to learn this, or I'm going to learn how to play the piano, or learn a new language. And there's all this momentum and energy, and like, I'm going to be a beginner. And it starts that way. And the real walls start to hit when it's not so easy. I feel like there's usually like like a hockey, slope that gets you going, so you feel good, and then it plateaus, and that's
Yeah.
when it gets. When so many people leave something, they start. That's why so many, the common thing.
Yeah.
You,
You have to
yeah.
keep going. You,
Mhm.
and it's uncomfortable because if you have a strong pattern of perfection and wanting to get things done or get to a certain goal, then it can be really uncomfortable when you're not there. And I could start to see that bubble up for me.
Mm.
And it was a great reminder just to try to let that go and really be in the whole process of it all. Like it's not about the end goal,
Right.
it's about the journey, what you learn along the way. And
Yeah.
I'm still learning to write, and I still see that pattern bubble up on occasion. Like, how come I'm not getting this fast enough?
That
Um,
voice. Yep.
that
But
inner critic that comes up.
it's the continuing showing up with anything. Like, I think that's the one thing that, a lot of coaches and mentors of mine have been like, look, if you put in the work, but you consistently show up, that's what makes and breaks the difference of anyone. No one has this magic, oftentimes it's not about some superpower skill that we're born with.
Yeah.
It's just the commitment. It's like the number of hours. So talk about
Consistent.
how you wanted to be a writer. You had this feeling, this seed, maybe back in 2017, you said.
Yeah.
Would you have ever imagined in 2017 that you'd be writing on the topic that you did?
Not at all. No. I didn't even think it was going to come true, Lauren. I mean, you talked about earlier how we find these dreams and these goals, and we then set all these expectations and ideas about how to reach that.
Right.
And quite honestly, when I look at where I was in that time, I didn't believe it to be true. Like, there was something in me that did, but it was still really fresh.
Right.
But a lot of my old patterning and mindsets would come through, like, who you think you are, like, that's not going to happen. And I really didn't know how that was going to unfold. I just was like, I want to publish my writing. I want to become a published writer, and let's see what happens. And, what I love about, connecting the dots and with curiosity was that then led me to a women's writing class. Because I wanted to explore my creativity and my intuition through writing and be in that safe space that we talk about. Like, I was vocally sharing when I was writing, because when you're an author, a writer, anything, you're very vulnerable because you're putting your words out there. So that was the first step, right? And then years later, I'm leading those classes because I was so inspired by that journey.
Yeah.
I was like, I want to hold the space for other women. And then in comes Rachel, in comes my curiosity around horses. And around the same time I started working with Rachel, so it would be beginning of 2021, I also signed up for a tiny book course. And that was going to happen in September. So but by the time I signed up, I was like, oh, it's like 6 months away, right?
Yeah.
Put that on the back burner. But I didn't actually think I was going to write like a full book or even have it published by that time. And
What's
I
the
had
name of
no
it?
idea.
What is the name of it? The book?
Wild Horse, Wild Heart. Yeah.
Yeah.
So even when I signed up, I didn't even think I would write about my journey with Cody. And I was like, let's just see what happens. This is in a few months. And because I write at the time, I was writing every morning. I was writing about my journey and how inspiring it was.
Did it flow? Did it more or less come out of you without? I don't want to diminish the work. I'm just I'm curious. I'm sure there's a lot of writers, people who feel like there's a book in them, but how did that work for you?
Yeah, you know what? Actually, when it came down to the book, so it was a 45-day course. And, my journey with Rachel and Cody that particular journey ended in May because she was moving and she had moved. And I had known this going in. And so I had more time, right? I had more free time, but it was around that ending that I did a lot of reflection, and I was like, I think I'm going to write a book about this, because all the life lessons that I was learning along the way that also were really relevant for people who may or may not be interested in horses or know anything about horses. And it really paralleled with the work I was doing with, yoga philosophy through the practice, being vulnerable, being sincere, being present, being connected to your body, listening to your intuition, your curiosity. All of those things came up for me in this journey with Cody. And in line with, my intuitive writing classes, I was inspired then to kind of organize this book in a way of each chapter of like a lesson or something that I learned along the way through the process of writing like horse riding.
Yeah.
And then to pair it up with practices that people could do every day that kind of, emulated what I had learned on that journey of the horse. And then I have, writing prompts in it that then could get the writer or the reader curious about, well, what does my intuition look like? What does my inspiration say? Those kinds of things. And so that was kind of stirring towards the end of my journey with Cody. And then once he had left, it was really becoming more present in my body. And then when I sat down to write, like on the days that I made the commitment and the appointment, everything just flowed.
Wow.
There was no push. I mean, there was days where I felt like I had a writer's block, but I was recently listening to an interview. This Mike Campbell, he was the guitarist for Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, and they were talking about the songwriting process and even the putting music together. And he was saying, when all the elements line up, creativity just flows. It's like magic. And you don't even know how it happens. Everything lines up. Yeah. And it just flows. And I was like, that's exactly what happened in my book writing process, and happens, as you can experience in other aspects of our life. But it was like everything lined up so perfectly that it just flowed when it was time for me to write. It wasn't anything of
must do it, the divine masculine that can be just a little bit too much of a whipping stick. Yeah. And so you did this in 45 days?
Yeah. And, going back to consistency and accountability. So the class really holds you accountable each week to show up for yourself and to make those writing commitments. And they made it a very gentle, loving, like kind process. So it wasn't like you have to get it done. If you do, great. These are the steps. And at that point, I would say halfway through, I was like, I'm getting this done. And the funny thing is their company is called Get It Done. But I was like, I want to finish this project. I want to start and finish. I want to get this done. And again, it didn't feel like I was pushing it to the end. I was done. And I would say the writing was about 45 days. And then the process of the book design and getting the title and the whole book production process probably was till the end of December. So about 60 days.
That's inspiring. That's like incredibly inspiring to anyone that, the idea of a book sounds a dream, but it feels so far-fetched. It's like, it doesn't have to, first of all, it doesn't have to be the one and done. I think we put so much pressure on like, what's the story? What's the one thing? And it's like, start with one and make it be, paring it down, and it doesn't have to be a whole novella of 400 pages.
No, that's what I was so drawn to, was like, it's called the tiny book course. So it's like, I can do a tiny book.
I can do the tiny book. Yeah. Well, I'd love to share the link with anyone that wants to grab a copy of it. Can you shoot it to me? Can you see the comment section, or only for me?
I don't think I can see it.
I'll add it after. I'll put your website in here. So that people can find you. You are an amazing writer. I'm on Dina's newsletter and I just love to get it because it's just inspirational,
Thank you.
and gentle. Like it's always makes me feel, it gives this like, vibe. I check in with myself as I'm on email lists, right? Like when I open that person's email, what does it create? Does it create contraction and like, more stress, or does it make me feel like, and yours do that.
Calm.
It is. That is your energy that I feel just even being in your presence. Like when you popped on the screen, I'm like, ah.
That's good.
Well, is there anything else that you want to share that is related to either the topic of writing, intuitive writing?
I think I just would just share, we talked about curiosity and intuition and like, the magic of that. And really, I think you and I, our journey started because of our intuition.
Yeah.
Right? Like we signed up at the practice because something inside of us said, yes, do this.
And by the way, none of that made sense. Like,
right.
For me in this case, it was an investment. So it was a financial investment. I was going through a divorce and I had the 4 kids. And this was like a course that was going to require weekend time, evening time, like leaning on others to ask for help, which I hate to do. And therefore, like everything pointed logically to don't do that. But yeah, intuitively,
right.
I felt a call.
Yeah. And you probably didn't know that you would be here today where you are as a mindset and confidence coach, right?
Ever. But I do go back and look at some of those journals. And when we would, journal about dreaming big and the big vision and what the intuition was, like, I bet yours probably maybe talked about a book. Mine talked about speaking. Mine talked about coaching women. Like, I don't remember thinking that back then, but there was something that was already planted.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's about listening to that and letting go of any artificial timeline.
Yes. I loved that, like, when we would be sitting in circle, the whole concept of like, who are we racing against? Like, what's the race about? Where are we really trying to get to?
Yeah.
And I remember that shift went from, like this hustle mentality and getting there or whatever at some sort of pace to like, you know what? I'm just going to die trying. Like every day is like, if my life ended, it was a very morbid concept in some ways, but very freeing.
Yeah.
To me, it was liberating because it was like, for once in my life, I'm not saying when these things line up, then I'll really give it a go. It's like, I'm giving it a go right now.
Yeah, you just see how it goes.
And you just see.
And it probably will lead to something else.
Right. That led to Rachel, which led to this, which led to that. Like these connections, I always love to hear people's journey in hindsight in ways because it's these weird inflection points that we never look or would have thought it would cross our paths. And that's part of like, I think the beauty of, the trusting the process, which is also the scary part.
Yeah.
But I know.
Yeah. Something magical definitely unfolds.
Yes. Happening right now. So I can only imagine 6 months, a year from now, us coming back on here and talking about what, if we continue to follow this path and we continue to listen, what will unfold?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any intuitive things in yourself that's like kind of rumbling that you feel?
Well, what came up for me was like patience, right? Because a woman that I've been working with, an equus coach, is moving, and she's moving in a couple weeks. And when I found out a couple days ago, I was like, oh, it really was like, she felt like she was like a coach and a mentor and a really good friend. But it's coming back to trusting the flow of life and trusting that these people and moments come into our lives for a reason, and reasons at the time we might know, and then reasons will start to unfold and make sense later.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's about trusting the process, trusting, the flow, then also being patient and be like, okay, so what's next? I don't know what's next. Rachel and Cody have since moved back, and I see them. But what is next in terms of working more with horses? I'm not quite sure, but I'm definitely curious about what could unfold, and I'm going to keep following that breadcrumb, like you said, and keep looking, because something inside of me has awakened, and I don't want, I don't want it to end with horses now. It seems like a lifetime thing, but I just don't know how that's all going to unfold.
Right. And that's the beauty of it. Like, we will
Yeah.
now have this documented too, to go back on in the archives someday and be like,
Yeah.
you didn't know, and where it is today.
Yeah.
But I love the word you used, awakened, because I think that is something that's really beautiful that starts to happen in the soul when we listen.
Mm-hmm.
Like, one of those seeds just sprouts a little bit, and it's an awakening, and it's really hard to go back to sleep from this awakening.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm like, oh, I miss the autopilot days, because this just feels a lot. But
yeah,
at the end of the day, I'm like, no, I would never trade the discomfort and the mix of like bigger emotions for something that just is like flat and kind of, cashing in my life, like not enjoying it.
Yeah. It's
So
definitely richer.
It's richer. It's scarier.
Yeah.
But I think that that's where I lean in on like my value of adventure.
Mm-hmm.
Because I look at it from a source of adventure. I'm like, well, adventures always have a bit of scary in it.
Yeah.
And that brings like a different energy. Even curiosity, I like that word too, because curiosity, as opposed to like, they sit next to each other, curiosity and judgment, but they're totally different, right? But judgment can be a lot of like, asking questions, whereas curiosity's got more of this discovery vibe, that exploratory. And people can tell too when you're asking questions out of curiosity, subconsciously, I'm saying, even, versus like a judgment.
Yeah.
And I always put on a sticky note on my laptop when I'm going to go into like a coaching session, and my 3 are curiosity, joy, and value. Like, that's my true north. It's like, stay curious, Lauren. Don't bring your own projections, your own shit into the mix.
Yeah.
Add some joy. Like, life can always use a little joy. And then value. Like, what would be valuable, not in service of me, but in service to someone else.
Yeah.
And I think we all need those guideposts for ourselves. It can be different for everyone, but
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Well, this was a fun way to spend my Friday. Like, I always love this, just because it's, I don't know, back to things that intuitively feel good.
Yeah.
Right?
Free-flowing conversation and
connection.
Exactly. Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Well, thanks for being with me in this space and sharing some of your story and sharing it with others.
Yeah.
You're inspiring. And
thank you.
Can't wait to see what's next.
So are you.
I
know, me too.
Yeah. All right. Well, take care, everybody. Thank you for also joining us.
Yeah, thank you.
Dina's emails in there, her website is there, so you can hop on her book and on her mailing list and all that fun stuff. Should I put your Instagram in there too? I know
Thanks, Lauren.
We both have this love-hate relationship with social media.
Yeah, I can send you the I don't know if I can comment in there. I can send you my link to the book, but
oh yeah, that would be great.
I was trying to see if I could comment, but I wasn't sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Keep following your intuitive guide.
Yeah. All right, everybody. I hate to always say goodbye. I hate the red button that ends it, but it is time. So sending
Thanks,
everybody
Lauren.
good vibes.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone. Bye.